Hello, it's Mark Kelly from What I Know Now. I'm delighted to welcome you to episode 4. In this episode I interview Karl Melvin. Karl is a psychotherapist and relationship coach whose background is a software developer. In today's episode we will discuss Karl's unconventional journey from IT developer to becoming a psychotherapist and life coach. We speak about mental health, depression, and how the right people around you and the lifestyle you live will actually form a big part of your mental health. We also speak about self-esteem, making the move to a new position after working for an employer for several years, challenging your fears and getting to know the real you. Karl gives a very frank discussion about his experience with psychotherapy and his new webinars and online course that he's created to manage relationships and build up your self-esteem to be the best version of yourself. We also speak about parenting and the importance of taking pride in yourself and how to balance your lifestyle, slow down and live in the moment. I took an awful lot from what he spoke about and living in the moment and being aware of the decisions that you actually make. Routines and how mindsets plays a crucial part in everything we achieve. You're in for an absolute treat from this episode. Now kick back, relax and enjoy. So Karl, tell me about your journey to here.
Sure, cool. Well, we met in 2008 and that was the first time I actually got redundancy from a company. I'd been working in Lexmark for about 8 years and it started there in 2000s. And it's interesting now that we're talking because it's now November 2016. It's almost 8 years, almost to the day actually that we met, you know. But if I was to go right back, it probably 99 is when I started in college, so I went to Tala IT for 4 years and did my degree in IT and computer studies, and that was fine and I really enjoyed it, you know. And you kind of fall into courses thinking that you're interested in something. I mean, I had a general interest in computer games and computers in general, but working in the IT industry is vastly different from what I thought it would be. But I liked it. I liked the kind of, you know, working in different environments and the different challenges, you know, especially kind of going straight out of college because, you know, I'd never worked in an office before. So even the dynamics of working in an office and the different interactions and working with people of different ages and everything else, it was quite an experience. So I'd finished in Tala IT, that was in 99, and my first job was in Irish Pyramid, just around the corner. And so I was there for about a year and a half, and it was a real eye-opener about the realities of working in IT and systems going down and it's panic stations if things aren't up quickly and having to work late nights, which is a part of it sometimes as well. But again, Irish Pyramid was a good environment because they understood we were coming straight from college, and I think that's important for anyone that's leaving any college and going into a full-time job. You need to make sure the employer has a training structure in place and some kind of buddy system. And
yeah.
You hear that mentioned a lot now, but not every company does it. You know, no. I hear stories of some companies that don't have that system, but thankfully Irish Pyramid did. And I was there for about a year and a half, and I'm still friends with all those guys. You know, it's great that I can keep in touch with them. And most of the people that I worked with in Irish Pyramid, they're all still there as well, which probably says a lot about the company and the department. So from there, I was lucky. A friend of mine was working in Lexmark out in East Point, and they were investing quite heavily in a new CRM system, and it was all being developed internally. So. And that was a great opportunity for me. It was my first exposure to Java and real software development and just integration of all these different technologies, Oracle, SQL, DB2, different databases, backends, middleware software, all that, you know, MVC type structures. This was all an eye-opener for me and it was great exposure. I probably wouldn't have got it in another company. So, and it was, again, what was great about Lexmark, they had quite a large organisation in Europe, so I got to travel to France a lot, and again you're working with people from different cultural backgrounds, and it was just a great education for me. And so that kind of took me up to about 2008, and we knew that there was restructuring happening, and we kind of got a sense that there might be redundancies happening, and yeah. You know, you don't want to kind of knee-jerk react and jump ship, and you're kind of hanging out to see what happened, and I was quite lucky that we got redundancy in 2008. So that would have been around, I think it was the end of August 2008, and that was probably around the time I got in touch with you, and I was trying to get a sense of what the industry was like, because when you were one company for 8 years, you're kind of removed from the industry in general.
It's institutionalized.
You know? Exactly, very much so, and I kind of didn't feel, I just didn't know what were the expectations, you know, what were the opportunities, what were the even from a financial point of view, what type of money was out there.
Salary,
and these are all real things that you're worried about when you go out. But so there was about 2 months between me getting redundancy and then meeting up with you, and then eventually you got me into FPD, which was great, and that, it was there for about, still there for coming up to 8 years, next 8 years next month, and again FPD has been a very great, just a positive move for me, because I live in Lucan and Lexmark was an East Point Business Park, and that was a nightmare every morning getting in, whereas FPD is 20 minutes in the car, so it was a massive step across. It was a really good parallel move, just in every sense. And then kind of around 2008, it was an interesting time for me, because on a personal level, I started to deal with a lot of things. I had a lot of people in my life who weren't very good for me. So, and you're not really sure, especially when you're emotionally enmeshed in any kind of relationship, you're not really sure what to do. It's not one of these things where I'm just going to say goodbye to them, I'm not talking to them again, especially if you're quite close and you're very fond of them. So I ended up going to psychotherapy, and I ended up in a place called Aspen Council in Lucan Village, which ironically is where I work now. And I didn't plan that. These things kind of happened accidentally. So I ended up going to therapy there, and I just loved the experience of going to therapy. It wasn't what I was expecting, and I didn't know what to expect. And that's one thing I find when clients come in, they know they have a problem and they know they want to talk about it, but they're not really sure what happens after that. And I remember I was doing my research before going into the session, and just to find out the different types of psychotherapy, because there is theoretical approaches, there's cognitive behavioural therapy, and then there's person-centred approaches, and then there's a whole different hybrids of different styles around. So I wanted to try and get some kind of sense of what I was going into, But thankfully the therapist, her name is Linda Balfe, I know her now, and she's a lovely woman, and she's been very supportive, and just the whole experience was different for me, and it resonated with me. It kind of stayed with me for a while. And I kind of thought, maybe there's something to this, like maybe, I started to read so much then, and I think, and like yourself, you were talking about you have an interest in self-help and Tony Robbins and all this, and you just start to inhale all this information, all these books, you absorb everything, and you try to apply it to yourself and how you're thinking and how you're engaging with other people. So it kind of came from that,
So if I stop you, so when you were 8 years at Lexmark, and I remember at the time you were quite apprehensive making the move into the marketplace. How did you feel leaving all your friends? Because you knew someone for 8 years, you're going there to drive out to East Point every day. Like, it starts to become a big behaviour, right?
It does, you're right, and it's the social structure that you lose, you know what I mean? I'm still friends with all those guys, and I still miss them from time to time. It's the little things, it's the silly conversations at lunch, it's knowing how somebody will react is a big one though, to be comfortable around someone, to know that I can go up with them with a problem, and know that they know me so well that they'll react fine. There's not going to be any aggro or any kind of aggression or anything like that. But you're right, it is that social support that you lose, and people they take it for granted. They don't realise, and again, they do jump into other companies, and they realise that social, because it takes years to develop that. It doesn't happen overnight,
Because what they say is, from my experience in recruitment, is when you're leaving, you're not as concerned in terms of, yes, money's important, yes, the new opportunity is really important, but leaving your friends, leaving the relationships that you've built up, leaving the different company culture, when you actually leave that is a big part of you going.
Oh, big time.
And the element of fear jumping out from that is massive. Yeah. And I find that when you sit down and speak to people about the counter offer and go through the process with them, it's very much the case of not necessarily telling the manager, how do they break the news to their friends? Yeah. How do they tell the person that they see every day, even the guy at the security desk that they're walking through, or they're talking with the local football team or whatever, that they're going. Yeah. Right? And that is a big, big concern.
It is, and it creates a sense of loss in people, and especially if somebody has any kind of abandonment issues, then it will trigger that, and some people get very upset by that thoughts, and I've seen it even with clients, and obviously it's a different dynamic, and they've only been with me a short space of time, but at the end of that session they get upset because there's a parting. Imagine being with someone for 8 years, and I mean, you spend 8 hours a day with these people, you go through so much, especially if you socialise together, and all ups and downs and weddings and everything else, so you're right, it is a huge thing, and I definitely didn't realise the effect it was going to have on me up until then. But again, that's part of human nature. We have to be able to deal with loss. 2008, it was in the mainstream, but not as it is now. There was no Niall Breslin giving talks. There was no a lust for life. There was none of that, you know. So it was still a little bit kind of, you're embarrassed going in case someone sees you. So I told my girlfriend because at the time, because she knew what I was going through and what I was struggling with. And I probably told my mom. See, my mom has a background in counselling herself.
Okay.
She was a group leader for an organisation called Recovery, and not the same, nothing to do with Alcoholic Anonymous, but it's a CBT method that they use in group training. It's very effective and it's free. They don't actually charge for these sessions. So my mom so she was well familiar with CBT, so she understood the process. So she was just, and again, she knew what I was struggling with as well. So so they were very supportive. But you're right, you don't talk about it, you know. And the interesting thing now, especially since I've become a therapist and I put so much out on Facebook, is that all of my friends are asking me about it now. I've so many people that I'm close to just ask me, you know, can you recommend somebody? Or one or two have kind of asked me, can we come to see you? I says, well, no, you can't because I know you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're my friend. Like I don't want to be your therapist. I'm your friend. You can ask me stuff, but it's a different dynamic, you know. But a lot of people are interested now.
So you went, what was your biggest learn from going, and how did you actually apply it to your life?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's awareness. You start to question your thoughts, you start to question your relationships, your decisions in life, and you kind of reflect on where you are now and why did I end up here. And that was the biggest thing for me, you know, and it's the same thing I do with all my clients. It's, why am I in this position now? How did I end up in this relationship? Why did I follow that career path, you know? And you do start to question all these things, and it's, for me specifically, it was relationships, and what relationships were holding me back from making the right career choices, you know, because, you know, IT, you know, I had an interest in IT, I still do, I still love technology, but a lot of it was because people felt it was the right thing for me to do, because it was perceived as a very secure job. Yeah, which, you know, it is. And that's it, and you'll find that with, and you know, and not just parents, but everybody, especially if you have a parent who is protective, they, you know, they will always veer their children towards a secure option, not their passion per se or the right option, but the one that means that they have that financial security and all these other things that come with it.
And you know, I can relate to that as a parent now. I've got two boys, one's 3 and one's just gone 1. And you genuinely want them to be happy, but you just want them to be safe. Of course. Right? So the type of jobs you do want for them to do is you would want them to veer towards the safe one. Maybe my son just making puzzles all day would be safe enough. But
it's funny though, and I mean, I don't have kids, but I can imagine how amazing it is, because you have this opportunity to develop your kids now, and you have everything, you're planting all these little seeds, like, you know, but again, we all have our own fears, which we project, you know, and so many of my clients now, they've come from parents who were projecting their own fears, and it really held them back, and now they're questioning all of that. You know?
I think the thing I've learned most from having kids is that they quickly pick up what you do, how you do it, and they copy it. And it's amazing to actually see.
Well, their brains are so, you know, that term neuroplasticity, where it's constantly firing new brains, but it's never more true than of a child. And they are absorbing every bit of information, all these cues and remarks, and even especially how you engage with your partner. You know, and that's very important. You have to be careful what you say sometimes.
Very interesting. Yesterday, I was listening to Influence. I got the audio book, and they were saying that at 2 years of age, they say the terrible twos. But the reason why it's terrible twos is the kids start to actually create their own identity, their own self-will. In the case of, actually, these rules don't really want to apply to me, I'll start questioning them, and I'll start to rebel. And actually, for boys, they'll do the opposite, which is funny to see in action.
It is, but I mean, there's a whole field of developmental psychology, and it's fascinating, and one guy, Eric Erickson, I don't know if you heard of him, but he did his psychosocial stages of development, and he's broken it down. But that 1 to 3 phase, I mean, they say the first 1,000 days are the most important in a child. But you're right, it's will development. It's learning to say no, and they just say no to everything. And it is learning to establish their own identity, and because they need to know who they are, and they still have an attachment with their parents. But they need to challenge that attachment in a healthy way, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know, same with potty training as well, and say no, they don't want to. You know, and that's a healthy thing. They're trying to just establish who they are, and make sure, and they're testing the waters of their parents to make sure that their parents will always be there. My self-esteem wasn't very good then, you know, it was pretty low, so I was always seeking approval. But because I was seeking approval, you sometimes adopt roles. You become someone who isn't you. And I was this people pleaser, and I became this mature person that was always the one that people came to if they needed help, or I was always the one that did the right thing. And not that that's a bad thing, but it isn't always me, because we can't always be good and bad all the time. We're humans, and we're grey, and we have moments where we're good, and there's other times we make mistakes. But it's those moments when we make mistakes, it's how we deal with ourselves. You know, so for me, if I made a mistake, I would beat me up quite hard. It was incredibly hard on myself, and that was an internalisation of relationships going back in the past when I had people who were critical of me. So I had to be aware of all these things, you know. And psychotherapy, I didn't walk out a brand new person. It just really evoked thought inside of me, and where am I, and it really stopped me in my tracks in terms of what decisions do we make next, you know. And it's a very progressive thing, you know. It's a huge amount of self-work. Psychotherapy provides the tools, and it creates an environment where you can go in and be comfortable around someone and just talk about what is actually going on in your mind. Because many people, you know, I hear this, people say, you know, I'm mad. And people generally think they're mad because they think a certain way, and they're not mad. They're thinking the exact same thoughts everybody else is. But as soon as they express that, it becomes, we validate it. It says, no, you're not mad, you're normal.
So you're working. You've come out of psychotherapy yourself. You're applying the principles, practices. You're working FBD. What made you actually go back to college and to start getting more involved?
Yeah, I think again, it was that funny time, the end of 2008, early 2009, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the reading about psychotherapy, and I wanted to know more about it. You know, and there's only so much you can learn from books. So I think, again, thankfully with redundancy from Lexmark, there was a re-education package which happens a lot.
Oh, brilliant.
And it was great, and it meant and the college I went to was in Clondalkin, PCI College, and they ran a foundation course for 6 months. So I thought, that'll cover that, like, you know. And that was, then again, it's the synchronicity, how certain things seem to happen, for me anyway, at certain times, and it was the best time for it to happen. And I thought, well, there you go, that has presented itself, money has come from nowhere, and all of a sudden I have this opportunity to go back to college. So I did the 6-month foundation course, and most of these foundation courses, they're really just an introduction to different theories and approaches. Plus, there's always a big personal development aspect of it, and it's, you know, you're in a group of complete strangers who are all interested in this, and you're expected to go around the room, and it's an unusual dynamic. It was my first experience with group therapy as well, because, and it wasn't intentionally group therapy, but it becomes group therapy, and that moment where you're terrified, you know, where you're that little bit of social anxiety, your heart's racing, and you're like, oh no, I don't want to, you know, people are going to know I'm nervous when I talk, and you do it, and then someone over there is giving you a nod, says, yeah, I feel the same. Like, oh my God, you know, that validation.
That person's become your best friend.
Yeah, but again, that group, I'm friends with all of them, because you share something, you know, and that's so important to maintain those connections, you know. But because
you're so vulnerable at those things as well, right? You just have to let people in, and just to drop your guards down and go, this is me.
And that's interesting to say that, because I remember it's not for everybody, this profession. You know, not everyone can do it because their levels of empathy aren't quite there. I remember that particular class, a girl opened up, and one of the guys in the group, a very nice guy, but he just made a judgment call. He just gave his opinion as to what she was struggling with. He was completely wrong, and it really triggered a lot of hurt inside her. She didn't appreciate how we spoke to her and all the rest, and he left. He never came back after that. Now, I wouldn't say that to scare people, but the one thing you learn in this is that you do have to be so careful with people. You know, everybody is dealing with their own stuff. You don't know what anybody is dealing with. You know?
Definitely.
And people know that. And I hear that said by a lot of people, but they don't act that way. They don't act as people who are conscious of the uniqueness or unique struggles, and because you don't know. I don't know what your private life is, so you don't know what my private life is.
Exactly.
Same with people watching this, you know, and it is, you know, it's understanding that you don't know. Don't pretend to know. Social media is a funny one, you know. It's such an amazing thing in a positive way, and it's such an incredibly negative thing as well. But the problem is we need to be taught how to use it. You know, and there's certain skills that we don't learn in school. We learn academic skills, but we're not taught how to think, or we're not taught how to perceive and separate what we're perceiving as the reality of someone's life. You know, and I think that's something that I would hope that the education system starts to build up. You know, the term EQ is used a lot now, and it's a good term to use. The emotional intelligence, being able to separate our negative thoughts and our negative emotions from reality.
So how are you balancing going to work day to day, doing an evening college course, or how are you finding that kind of balance?
It's tough, and I think the biggest thing is looking after my own health. You know, it's because that sometimes goes out the window. It can very easily, when you're getting up in the morning going to work, and then I'd be in work or whatever. It could be 9, it could be 9:30. And then I have to leave at 4 on the button to get to the practice at 5. So you're driving through traffic. I need to be there early to prep because I need a couple of minutes for myself before I go to see clients, just to park everything else, you know. And I mean, there's times then, I mean, I see my last client, it could be 8:30, it could be 9, so I mightn't get out of practice till, and then I have to do my notes after that. It could be 10:30 before you're getting out.
That's a long day.
Well, it is a long day, but you work through it, and I think that it's such a unique profession in that there's two people talking the same way we're talking here. And I mean, this is, you know, we're talking about real issues, but we're not going deep into who we are as people. With psychotherapy, that's what it is. And you get lost in that sometimes, and you forget how you feel, and you forget that you're tired, you forget all your problems, and you get so engrossed in that moment. And it's therapeutic for the two of us. It's not just for the client. I get a lot from that as well. And to know that we've made a healthy connection, and then they leave, and I'm energized from that. You know, and I walk out a session, I feel like, you know, I feel like I've done some good. You know, I've made some connection with people. I've been able to influence, hopefully in a positive way. And I've given them a platform to come in and just talk and to share all these things. You know, and people come in and they share things which they've never told another sinner. They've never told another human being, you know, and the weight that's offloaded in those sessions. But because we're not emotionally connected, it doesn't affect me personally. You know, I'm not part of their circle, you know. So it is tiresome, but you work through all of that, you know, because you try and look at the bigger picture of the impact that you're having on people's lives. And that's the good thing about some of the other work I've done outside of the counselling practice, because I don't see my clients leave, and unless I bump into them in Liffey Valley Shopping Centre, which I do a lot, I don't really see the impact that I might have unless they come back into the sessions and they tell me, and very often they do, and I try to get feedback from my clients, but sometimes they disappear and then they come back 2 or 3 months later, you know. So I don't always get that, whereas if I write a blog or record a vlog, I get an immediate reaction from people because people are more inclined to email and say, well, look, thanks for that, or can you cover X, Y, and Z, you know. So the social media aspect is great for me in that regard, but that's the only thing, is that I don't always see the end product. I don't see the results after.
Or kind of flying the wall to actually see how that person
behaves. That's it, like it's completely inappropriate for me to pick up the phone and ring them and say, how are you getting on?
Yeah,
you know,
I'd like to get some feedback, please. It
is, but I do know, again, a lot of the research that I follow now are psychologists who have done that work. They've created an environment where they do a lot, especially around couples. You know, I do a lot of research around relationships and couple relationships, what work and what doesn't work. And there's one guy called John Gottman. He's very interesting, and he created a thing called the Love Lab. And he had couples go in and spend weekends there, and he was observing everything, right down to their body temperature and the stress levels and specific things, their cued emotional reactions. But then he followed them for years and years after, and he was able to find out what worked and what didn't work. He was able to correlate the behaviours he was seeing in a weekend, especially how openly, let's say there's a row, and they used to call it a harsh startup. So let's say I have a problem with you, those initial words dictated their entire relationship, and if they were going to work and if they weren't going to work. And if they started quite harshly, he says in many cases they split up later on, like, because they weren't able to weave into an argument. They started really sharp, really at the start, you know.
If you were to look back from doing the psychotherapy yourself and kind of what you know now, what would you say your biggest learn from it was?
You know, for me, it's about waking up. You know, you have to wake up to who you are and where you are. You know, and I do this every day now. I'm constantly questioning what's going on now with me, especially my emotional triggers. I mean, even before I was coming up today to do this, you know, you're anxious. You know, you're a little bit of anxiety because you know it's a new environment. You're talking in front of a camera and all these different things. And in the past, you're just in that moment. It's not enough for me to just be in that moment. I need to be aware of that moment, and I'm constantly asking, why am I anxious? I don't need to be anxious. I don't need to be afraid. You know, in the same way that any other fear that comes up in my life, because worries will always creep up. You can write it down as much as you like, and you'll use up a lot of paper, but a new fear will always pop up.
Always there.
And it's just this constant reassessment, you know, and there's that critical self-reflection and when I say critical, not in a harsh sense, but an open sense. We have to be completely honest with ourselves. And I look at society in general, and I see people walking around, and it's a little bit like The Walking Dead, I think, in that people are just unconsciously doing the same thing all the time, going through the same behaviours, eating crap food, having a crap lifestyle, doing the same job that they've done for years, and going home and just watching the TV, and they're not questioning their life.
So they're just like a kind of just in the moment, just doing those bad habits.
That's it.
Over and over again.
And even relationships, you see patterns of relationships where people are, especially with my clients, they're just having the same rows, maybe with different partners, but the same problems, same issues are coming up. And they don't kind of ask themselves, people have a tendency to blame other people, to project outwards.
Sure.
And if someone is single, it's always another person's fault. Or if they're rowing with somebody, it's always that person's fault. They never shine that light inwards.
Tell me about some of the talks. What would you talk about? I said there's a variety of different things.
Yeah, I think it has to be relative to the people I'm talking to. I don't like giving generic talks. So, you're just trying to get a sense of what specifically they're struggling with. For example, the Irish Farmers Association had me in, and that was back in May. And it was specifically a group of dairy farmers, because they've a couple of different subdivisions. And this was interesting for me. This came, I had literally about 3 days notice to go in and talk in front of 130 dairy farmers, So I could count with this hand how many times I've been on a farm. So I had to, do the homework, and I didn't have a lot of time, but just to get a sense of what's happening in their lives, what are they struggling with, what, it was stress management specifically, but what is stressing them? It's no point in just giving a general talk about it.
Yeah.
And I found, again, it's such an eye-opener for me, the lifestyle of a dairy farmer, how they're up at 6 in the morning and they're going to bed late, but they wake up at 2, 3 in the morning all the time, and they've monitors in their TV or their bedroom so they can keep an eye on the calves. Yeah. So they're not getting a good night's sleep because the light emissions from the TV are going to mess with their circadian rhythm, their natural body clock, which needs to shut down to get sleep.
I never would have thought that.
I never thought of it either. Yeah. One of the biggest stressors is difficult calves. Getting a calf to move and there's all these different things, but the most obvious one within the farmer community is isolation. Obviously social isolation, because there are many hours, many days, weeks, months, years on their own on these farms, especially if they've had kids who've moved on, or if their husband or wife is bereaved, and that was something that it's a very difficult thing to tackle. But what I found when I was able to go and give a talk, I brought it up. And then they're very good, the IFA, they create a platform for everyone in this room can talk, and they run around with the mics, and they all start having this QA with me about it, and they all wanted to talk about it, just to say to everyone else that it's okay to talk about these different things. But what really impressed me with that group was because when you go into give a talk, and I always have about 30 minutes of QA, because I can talk all I like, but people are going to have specific questions. Yeah. But sometimes you get people stonewall you. They get blankness because they're anxious, they don't want to talk. But the farmers with no hesitation, and I got about 4 or 5 questions, and just really interesting questions, and again, it's good for me to be on the spot and to try and answer these things, and then you walk away thinking, geez, maybe I should have said that, or maybe I could have said that. But again, that's part of the process, Yeah,
and I think that's where you probably evolve with your messaging as well, which is good. So it depends on the group of people that you're actually...
Yeah, exactly. And that was a specific community. Obviously, a lot of the talks I do would be in Dublin, and it could be different organisations here. And they've got contemporary stresses, the lifestyle of this society, obviously it's traffic, it's smog, it's fast food, and then it's the pressure of the job, and I know different organisations, they have different pressures on their staff, but some are like, they have to clock in first thing in the morning, they have to clock out within that time frame, they have to get X amount of work done. But then what I found is, and a lot of my clients, corporate clients, they realised they really talk to their own staff, they ask them what's going on, and a lot of it is they're having problems at home, and that stress is being brought into work, and that's not necessarily my niche, but a big thing of what I do is help people manage their relationships, especially their family relationships, a lot better, so they can pull back a little bit emotionally and relax and learn to stay calm and learn to deal with their family a little bit more objectively. Now, it's incredibly hard because nothing will trigger your emotions faster than an unhealthy family. Yeah. But if they can position them psychologically, because you're an adult now, your mom and dad, your family shouldn't be in front of you psychologically, they should be behind you, and your brothers and sisters. It doesn't mean you don't think about them, but you should be free to go off and live your life. But if you're like this all the time, you're going to be carrying that burden on top of the normal burden of having a job and having kids and your relationship with your wife, and it's that detachment process where you can just put them behind. So a lot of the companies, they recognize, right, that's a skill that we need to bring into our staff, and that's one thing I've started to do with them now. And again, it's a process of it doesn't happen in one talk. That's the thing. Like, so it's great that they've embraced this. They realize that you can't just have someone in for 30 minutes and think that this is going to fix all their problems. People are so unconscious. They're eating something and then they're in bad mood, and they can't see that correlation. You know, I see it even in the office environment. People are like this. They're agitated, or they're fidgety, and they're dropping stuff. And I'm like, but dude, I was watching you eating a load of chocolate this morning. You know?
Or it's also like one of your colleagues says they're going to give up smoking. You're like, actually, please don't.
Yeah, it does, because they compromise. Well, again, which is worse, you know. But
not in the short term. Yeah.
No, it's not in the short term. Yeah. But even talking about the clients that I work with, like, again, it's making them aware of our lifestyle now, you know. And one stat I got from the World Health Organization, which was very interesting, they're seeing depression's on the rise, you know, and they reckon by 2020 it will be the second biggest condition that we have to deal with. But they're seeing trends between the rise in depression and the rise in urbanization. And you look at people that are moving away, or probably maybe now starting to move back to the country, but generally people are moving back into the city. And you look at city living, you know, you look at the Lewis, you look at smog, traffic, cars, sitting at bus stops and all the rest. So there is a correlation between how we're living our lives and how depression is affecting us, you know.
How have you got your routine? Have you kind of got you have to get your exercise or your walks?
And it slips sometimes. My biggest routine at the moment is food, you know, and that's the biggest thing. And again, it's out of necessity because of all my stomach problems. I had to get it back on track. So, you know, I get up in the morning and I meditate a lot, but I'm not a morning person, you know, so. And I love reading stories of people getting up at 5 in the morning, meditating, they do 4 hours work, and I'm just like, that's just not me.
Not you.
Like, no, I do no work in the morning. You know, I get into FBD and I'll do work, but that's 9 o'clock, like nothing happens before then. But I make sure, I'll get up and I'll take my prebiotic and probiotic and take a fish oil supplement, and I take a really dense one. It's actually drops. And that just, I know my brain needs that, you know. I shower every morning just to wake my body up, and it's you know, it's important to groom and to look after yourself. You know,
definitely.
Iron your shorts, wear clean clothes. Little things like this are so important to how you feel about yourself and the image that you're projecting as well.
If you were to look back over this year so far, what would you say your biggest learnings have been?
Yeah. I think, you know, again, part of it, slowing down is a big thing, because again, I'm in too much of a hurry and I tend to take on too much. You know, I think we are only human. I think we sometimes let our minds run away with ourselves and we visualize this end game, but we don't. It takes time, you know. So I think I kind of stepped back a little bit and I said, I'm going to have to mind myself and look after myself a lot more.
Yeah, it's so important.
But you need to know where you're going as well, you know. And you'll find, I know a lot of therapists who finished their time in college and they're practicing because they have to practice because they need to build up hours, and they don't look past that. All they're thinking about is doing up their hours, you know. I think a big part of that is because there's tons of psychotherapists maybe in the newspapers, and not a lot of them are really putting themselves out there in terms of videos or blogs or everything else. So they've nothing to benchmark against, and that's what I'm getting psychotherapists emailing me saying, what are you doing, how did you do this, how did you do that, because they're realising that there's more to this industry than just 2 people sitting in a room and talking. There's a bigger audience out there. There's loads of people there who are genuinely interested in the skill set that they have and the experience that they could share, you know. And then how's your online course then? Are you doing some videos at home? How are you getting out there? It's only taken form now. I had an idea of what I was going to do, but my business coach has brought me in a different direction. It's going to be all webinars actually, as it turns out. Yeah, and so I'm trying to get my head around webinar software and trying different tools and which one kind of matches.
Can you use Google Hangouts for that?
Yeah, I'm not too gone on Google Hangouts, to be honest with you. I was using Webinar Jam for a while. And the problem with that, with Webinar Jam in particular, was Google launched a patch or a fix on Monday, and it just invalidated. Webinar Jam would not work conventionally. They found a workaround, but I'm like, well, Jesus, if Google does another change in a month or 2 months' time, and that's the night I'm going to host a webinar, this could be a problem. So I didn't like that. Plus, it streams off YouTube as well, I think. you want to create some kind of exclusivity with these things, you know, especially if someone is exclusively signing up for something and if they're paying for a service, you don't want it going out to the greater public.
Can you use like Vimeo Business or one of those?
I'm looking at Webinar Ninja, to be honest with you, which I've only, again, I only got it the weekend, and it's very simple, but it's affordable as well, because some of the software is quite dear, you know. And I'm looking at, I've already got ClickFunnels. So this is the thing about any kind of career change. It's important to use what you've already had as well. Yeah. You know, and I've been able to bridge the gap between the IT skills and psychotherapy, and that's really benefited me a lot. You know?
So in the simplest terms, is that you just doing a video, like on a camcorder, or like just off your Mac? Or
it'll be off the laptop, but I have a PowerPoint presentation. So I mean, obviously initially, this is me, hello, because people need to see who you are, like, and you know, people need to know my background and where I got to where I am today for them to trust you, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Trust has to be there, you know, and to really, there's no agenda. I'm only just trying to help, you know. From that, you can just flip over. I have really good PowerPoint templates. I spent a lot of time trying to find the right template to suit the audience, you know. And again, should have working with different companies. Presentation is really important, you know, and it's not about flashiness either. It's about presenting the information in a way which is really legible. Simple. My biggest crime is that I overload slides with information, and it's overkill, because it's too much information for people to absorb. So now I'm at a phase where I'm stripping down. I'm trying to get to the core message I'm trying to make, you know. So the webinar, I'll have a free webinar which will lead into a 6-week online program. It'll all be online. It'll all be me teaching these things.
What's that going to be called?
Relationships, building better relationships. So it's all about the mistakes that I see in relationships and the things that people need to do. But me talking for an hour is not enough. There's so much more deeper work to be done, and then the 6-week program off that is really looking at what you need and why you need it, looking at building self-esteem. It'll be about stress management. You know, I have a lot of techniques to do to help people relax, how to set boundaries, because people struggle with the word no, and building their own self-esteem, and that's a lot to do with the people who are around us, and finding out where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are, finding out what happened to your self-esteem. You know, we all have that inner critic. You referred to the monkey mind, but it works in different ways, and finding ways to keep that guy pretty quiet so you can make an objective decision and just be at peace with who you are. Like,
reading any favourite book at the moment, or you'd recommend?
A lot of college work at the moment. I'm reading John Gottman's book about the 7 principles of successful marriage, believe it or not. But I read a lot about neuroplasticity at the moment, the brain that changed itself.
Oh wow.
I'm reading a book. There's a guy called Patrick McKeown. He's based in Dublin, and he teaches a method of breathing. Dr. Butyenko, I think is the guy's name, and he did a huge amount of research into breathing patterns and belly breathing, and how long we need to. Actually, we don't breathe properly because we all tend to breathe from our chests, and you know, most people who study meditation know this already, but he really fine-tuned the breathing. We have to retain oxygen. It helps to oxygenate our blood, helps to flush out cortisol, which is the stress hormone from our body. So I'm reading a lot around that. So, but I'm back reading a lot because I'm doing my masters now, so I have to go back to the books in terms of theoretical stuff as well, which I studied and I know, but when you're doing a master's level, the levels of expectations are much higher, you know, so I have to up my game a little bit there.
So I've asked this question the last couple of times. If you have the opportunity to speak with your 18-year-old self or your 80-year-old self, who would you speak with and why?
Who would I'd probably, an 18-year-old self, you'd like to think that you could make some kind of changes. But there's so much, you know, you do go back and think, geez, I'd love to have done this and I'd love to have done that. I mean, at 18, I had done a year in tele IT, and if I was honest with you, I would have left it. I would have said, get out of IT, not because it's wrong for you, but there's something else for you out there, you know. And I probably got that sense of it back then as well, that, you know, because I always said it, I work hard. That's how I get the job done. But I have an aptitude for psychotherapy. I have an aptitude for relationships. I don't think I have an aptitude for IT, you know. And I would definitely question the people who are in my life then as well, and ask myself, do I really need them, and why do I need them? Because they really inform how you feel about yourself and who you are and the decisions that you make going forward. And it was relationships that held me back. I mean, I probably would have gone travelling, but I never did the travelling thing, and it was because of my emotional bond to specific people. I probably would have taken a different career path. I would have done all these different things, only because how I felt around a specific relationship.
Okay.
And again, self-esteem, I would try to convince myself, and it's a very hard thing to do, how unimportant people were, people that we place value on in relationships and on shallow things, on looks and on achievements in life, and it was because of that then I brought people into my life who were high achievers and who looked a certain way. That doesn't mean they were the right person for me, and it doesn't mean that they had the respect that I needed from them, and even when I got it, maybe it was under certain conditions.
Okay, so you make some quite good advice there. You offer yourself, right? So that's quite quite interesting. And my last question, what gives you your most energy in the day?
Okay, yeah.
What activity gives you the most energy in the day?
Yeah, probably walking. I think, our bodies are designed to move, and moving energizes. And the problem is sometimes when you're tired, you don't feel like you have the energy. You need to create that energy. Energy creates energy. And for me, it's just getting out, and sometimes I run, sometimes I walk. But for me, I need to have a sense that I'm moving forward, physically as well as psychologically. And it doesn't have to be about going to the gym or lifting weights, but just as long as my body is moving forward, I feel like I'm making progress, and that's the biggest thing for me in life, because for so many years I felt held back. Now I don't, but now I'm running ahead, and now I have to slow myself down. Okay.
So if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to get you?
Yeah, well, I work in Aspen Counselling in Lucan Village, so if you just Google Aspen Counselling, they'll find the number there. They can ask for me or anyone there, because they have a great team. They're all really good therapists up there, and they're really nice as well. Or toxicescape.com, that's the blog. I try and put something up every week. There's a mail list. I don't send crap. I hate people who send spam all the time. I don't send spam. I try and send stuff that's helpful to people. And Facebook, Toxic Escape, you'll get it on Facebook as well.
Okay. I'll put all the details in the show notes. But Karl Melvin, thank you so much.
Mark. Good to see you, Dad.
Thank you so much. My thanks to Karl Melvin. You can subscribe via iTunes or your podcast of choice. Just search for WIKN. You can also find the past episodes at www.wikn.co. On that site you can also subscribe to the mailing list and find out more about working with me. I'll be back next week, and I hope you'll join me. What action are you going to put into practice after listening to this talk?